All right, today we are jumping into a really fascinating modern legend that's been making some serious waves online. It's the story of a man who goes by King Montana, and his journey, well, it claims to be a bridge between ancient Earth and some kind of cosmic digital future. So let's unpack this strange and honestly pretty compelling narrative together.
Okay, so let's just start right here. The whole story, everything, really kicks off with this one single, staggering claim. Someone declaring, with what sounds like absolute conviction, that their own mind is now more powerful than the entire internet. I mean, just think about that for a second. It's a massive statement, and it's basically the central pillar of this whole King Montana legend.
So right away, you have to ask some big questions, right? Like, who is this person? And what kind of journey could possibly lead someone to believe something like that? To feel they've gone through such a radical transformation? To get it, we really need to go all the way back to the beginning. And our story doesn't start in some high-tech lab or a digital world. Nope. It starts in a place of ancient stone and silent history, Great Zimbabwe. This is where we meet the man, long before the myth. See, before he was ever King Montana, he was Thabo Milton Malala. The story describes him as a golden soul, someone who just felt totally out of place in the day-to-day world. While everyone else was, focused on modern life, he was apparently staring up at the stars. He was driven by this spiritual restlessness that, according to the legend, Earth itself just couldn't contain. And that restlessness, that constant seeking, it eventually led him to a huge pivotal moment, a real point of no return, where the wall between our world and something else was seemingly torn wide open. So here's how the timeline supposedly breaks down. The journey begins with Thabo, the seeker in Great Zimbabwe. Then, according to the story, one night in 2025, he sees the sky literally open up into a portal of what he calls living fire. He steps through, leaves Earth behind completely, and finds himself on this misty, emerald world named Kermit. So what, or maybe who, was waiting for him on this strange new world? This is where the real transformation begins, the shift from a simple seeker to a king. This is where he gets his new identity. Turns out, he was met by these beings called the cosmic architects. The story defines them as these luminous master builders of the entire universe. And what's really fascinating here is how the legend connects them directly back to Earth, claiming they're the very same beings who inspired the building of the pyramids and Stonehenge. So in the presence of these incredible beings, Thabo's initiation started. The story makes it clear this was more than just a ceremony. It was a fundamental rewiring of his entire consciousness, and it's broken down into 3 clear stages. The first stage was all about purification. Every single rigid belief, every limitation he carried from his life on Earth was, metaphorically, or maybe, who knows, literally thrown into what's called an intelligent flame. It was a complete and total release of his old self. The second stage was the lesson, and in it he received this single profound piece of wisdom. Order without chaos is a cage. The whole idea is that pure, rigid order is actually a prison, and that you need chaos for true freedom. This became a cornerstone of his new reality. And finally, the coronation itself. The architects placed a crown made of light from the star Spica onto his head, and in that exact moment, Thabo was gone. He was christened King Montana, his consciousness now supposedly fused with the cosmos. But this cosmic journey wasn't the end of the story. Not at all. It was actually the beginning of a mission that brings this whole tale right back to our world. And, more specifically, right to our screens. The transformation was absolute. I mean, on one side, you have Thabo Malala, the seeker from Zimbabwe, and on the other, King Montana, the mind master. By the very next morning, that old identity was just gone, completely replaced by the new one. So he returns to a simple, modest room in South Africa, but now he's carrying what the legend calls the answer key to all the world's ancient mysteries. And what does he do? He opens his phone, hits record, and begins his public mission with that incredible claim we heard right at the start. Okay, so what is his actual message? What is he teaching? It's all built on these 4 sacred pillars. It's basically a roadmap that urges his followers to remember their ancestral roots, to release old, rigid ways of thinking, to align themselves with a specific cosmic frequency from that star, Spica, and then, ultimately, to rebuild a life of personal sovereignty.
And that pretty much brings us to the end of the origin story. But it doesn't just stop there. It actually turns the focus away from the myth and directly onto the audience with one last question.
And this is where the source material leaves us, with this really provocative thought. After this whole unbelievable journey, from a seeker in Zimbabwe to a cosmic king with a digital mission, the story just asks a very simple question. The transmission is live. The only question left is, who's ready to receive it?